When the cold comes in, well, you should have like hand warmers, hand blankets.
20.
It's very, very cold, and you get hungry and thirsty, and it's not a good place to be.
Winter in Denver does not arrive gently. It tightens its grip with cold, wind, and silence. Snow covers the city, but it also hides struggle. Beneath bridges and along frozen sidewalks, survival begins. For more than 11,500 people, winter comes without protection. No shelter when the wind cuts through layers. No heat when temperatures fall below safe limits. Thin air makes every breath harder. Cold nights stretch longer than they should. Health weakens. Energy fades. Every decision becomes about staying alive. This is not a rare emergency. This is winter, repeating every year. In one of America's fastest-growing cities. This is the winter homeless crisis.
It sucks. It's getting colder and colder, and they keep moving us around. Like, where did they expect us to go? Like, we have totally nowhere to go. Every spot that we have to camp, they come and kick us out.
Chapter 1. When cold forces people to turn sidewalks, cardboard, and movement into tools for survival. Winter in Denver exposes realities most people never notice. As temperatures fall, people without stable housing begin using the city in ways never designed for living. Many do not lie down, even when exhausted. Cold pavement pulls heat from the body quickly, so people sit upright or crouch to reduce contact with frozen ground. Some place cardboard, plastic, or extra clothing beneath them to slow heat loss. Movement becomes a survival technique. People stand up every few minutes, walk short distances, or shift positions to keep blood circulating. Remaining still for too long allows cold to settle deeper into the body. Sunlight is carefully tracked. When it appears, people move toward it, even if only for a few minutes of warmth. When wind increases, they reposition near walls, recessed doorways, or building corners that reduce exposure. Belongings are tightly controlled. Backpacks often carry everything needed to manage cold, extra socks, gloves, plastic bags to keep items dry, and layers added or removed throughout the day. Wet clothing is avoided whenever possible, as moisture increases heat loss dramatically. Public sidewalks also serve another purpose: awareness. Being visible increases access to outreach teams, food services, and emergency support. Isolation during winter increases physical strain, so staying in shared spaces becomes a form of protection. At Denver's high altitude, cold air forces the body to work harder just to stay warm. Energy is depleted faster. Fatigue arrives sooner. What looks like sitting still is constant decision-making. Every movement is calculated. Every pause has a purpose. But this is only the first adjustment winter demands. As temperatures drop further, survival routines change again. The next chapter reveals how snow reshapes daily life even more. Chapter 2, when rising rent and falling stability push ordinary lives onto frozen sidewalks. Winter in Denver does not begin on the streets. For many, it begins with a bill they can no longer afford. In recent years, housing costs across the city have continued to rise. A single room can cost over $1,200 to $1,300 a month, even before utilities. For people living paycheck to paycheck, one missed payment can unravel everything. One man describes how it happened quietly. He worked irregular hours and tried to keep up with rent. When his income dropped, the $1,300 monthly payment became impossible. Within weeks, he was carrying his belongings in a backpack, sitting on the same sidewalk he once walked past. A woman nearby shares a similar story. She once worked at a retail store, standing for long shifts indoors. When hours were cut and rent increased, she couldn't recover fast enough. Now, winter finds her outside, keeping her hands warm with donated gloves. These stories are not rare. In 2026, thousands of people in Denver are counted as experiencing homelessness through annual surveys. Some sleep outdoors. Others move between shelters, cars, and temporary spaces. Winter exposes how fragile housing stability can be. Cold does not ask how someone arrived here. It only demands adaptation. On snowy days, people adjust routines shaped by loss. They protect belongings from moisture. They manage energy carefully. They wait, often longer than expected, for help, warmth, or opportunity. Homelessness is not always the result of long-term street life. Sometimes, it begins with rent that rises faster than wages. But losing housing is only the first shift winter brings. As daylight fades and temperatures fall further, survival routines change again. The next chapter explores how nights reshape life on the streets. The next chapter explores how nights reshape life on the streets. Chapter 3. How nightfall changes everything when temperatures drop and the city goes quiet. As daylight fades in Denver, winter routines shift again. Night brings lower temperatures, quieter streets, and fewer places to pause safely. People begin preparing hours in advance. Extra layers are saved for night, not worn during the day. Belongings are reorganized to keep dry items protected from snow and frost. Movement slows after dark. Energy must last longer. People choose locations carefully, favoring areas with light, nearby activity, or partial cover from wind. Sleep becomes light and interrupted. Cold makes rest shallow, and many remain alert to changing weather conditions. Checking gloves, adjusting layers, and repositioning becomes part of the night routine. Public spaces empty, but the cold does not. For those outside, night is not rest, it is management. Managing warmth, managing energy, managing uncertainty. Winter nights reveal how preparation matters as much as endurance, but night is only one part of winter's cycle. When shelters and warming centers come into focus, new challenges appear. The next chapter looks at where people turn for warmth and what happens when space runs out. Chapter 4. How extreme cold affects the human body and why winter health becomes a silent struggle. Winter in Denver does more than lower temperatures. It places continuous stress on the human body, especially for those exposed to the cold for long hours. One of the most common winter health risks is hypothermia, a condition where body temperature drops faster than it can be replaced. It does not begin suddenly. Early signs include uncontrollable shivering, confusion, slowed movement, and extreme fatigue. Cold exposure also worsens existing health conditions. Joint pain increases. Breathing becomes harder in cold, dry air. Minor cuts and injuries heal more slowly. For people living outside, prevention becomes a daily responsibility. Staying dry matters as much as staying warm. Wet clothing accelerates heat loss even when temperatures appear manageable. If you're finding this video informative so far, please consider liking it. It helps the YouTube algorithm share these real stories with more people who need to see them. Health outreach teams play a critical role during winter. Mobile clinics and medical workers check for cold-related symptoms, provide basic care, and share information about warming options. They also distribute socks, thermal layers, and guidance on recognizing early warning signs. Emergency services receive more winter-related health calls, but many people delay seeking help. Leaving belongings unattended or losing a place in line for shelter can feel like too much risk. At Denver's high altitude, the body uses more energy just to stay warm. Fatigue builds faster. Illness becomes harder to recover from. Winter health struggles often remain invisible. They develop slowly, quietly. Understanding cold-related health is key to understanding winter homelessness itself. But health is only one part of winter survival. When warmth is limited, people must turn to shelters and warming spaces. The next chapter looks at what happens when those spaces are full. Chapter 5, where temporary warmth depends on space, timing, and public awareness. As winter continues, shelters and warming centers become essential points of relief. These spaces offer heat, a place to sit, and short breaks from the cold. But access often depends on timing, location, and availability. Many people plan their entire day around these services. They arrive early, sometimes hours ahead, waiting outside in cold conditions. Others calculate whether the distance and effort are worth the limited time indoors. Shelters are not permanent solutions. Most operate on fixed schedules and limited capacity. When doors close, people return to the streets with their belongings, preparing again for cold exposure. Public awareness plays a role here. When more people understand these realities, support systems gain visibility and resources. If you haven't liked or commented on this video yet, please consider doing so. Your engagement helps the YouTube algorithm push this story to more people. One like or comment can help these realities reach someone who may be able to help. Sometimes, awareness leads to action. A viewer donates supplies. A volunteer joins an outreach team. A conversation begins that didn't exist before. Winter survival is shaped not only by weather, but by how widely these stories are shared. Visibility matters, attention matters, and sometimes, change begins with a single view. But even with shelter access, winter survival requires constant preparation. Food, clothing, and daily routines become critical. The next chapter explores how people manage basic needs in the cold. Chapter 6, why food, calories, and warm clothing become essential tools for winter survival. As winter deepens, survival depends on more than shelter alone. Food and clothing become critical resources for staying warm. Cold weather forces the body to burn more calories just to maintain heat. Without regular meals, energy drops quickly. Fatigue sets in sooner. The ability to stay warm becomes harder to maintain. Many people plan their day around food distribution schedules. Missing a meal can mean struggling through the night with less energy. Warm drinks and high-calorie foods offer temporary comfort and practical support. Clothing choices matter as much as food. Layers trap heat. Hats and gloves protect areas where heat escapes fastest. Dry socks are especially important, as cold feet can lower overall body warmth. People carefully manage what they wear and when. Extra layers are often saved for nighttime. Wet clothing is avoided, even if it means sitting still longer. Donations and outreach supplies help fill gaps, but availability changes daily. People adapt constantly, using what they have to meet winter demands. In cold weather, food and clothing are not conveniences. They are tools. Quiet, essential tools for making it through the season. Rehook. But winter does not only test physical strength, it also weighs heavily on the mind. The next chapter explores the emotional and mental strain of enduring long winters outdoors. Chapter 7, how long winters quietly affect mental health and emotional resilience. Winter does not only challenge the body, it also places steady pressure on the mind. Cold, limited daylight, and constant uncertainty can increase stress and anxiety. Long hours spent waiting for food, shelter, or warmth can feel isolating. The lack of routine makes it harder to feel grounded. Many people describe winter as mentally exhausting. Energy is spent planning each day around survival needs. Simple decisions require careful thought. Rest never feels complete. Have you ever noticed how your mood changes after just a few cold, dark days indoors? Now imagine facing months of winter without a warm, private space to recover. Reduced sunlight can affect mood and sleep patterns. For people already under stress, this can deepen feelings of fatigue and disconnection. Social interaction becomes limited as people conserve energy and avoid exposure. Mental health outreach teams and counselors work to provide support during winter months. They offer check-ins, information, and connections to services when possible. But access is not always consistent. Despite these challenges, resilience appears in quiet ways. People share information. They look out for one another. Small conversations help reduce isolation. Winter tests emotional strength as much as physical endurance. But resilience does not erase uncertainty. As winter stretches on, time itself begins to feel different. The next chapter looks at how long winters change the sense of time and routine on the streets. Chapter 8. When winter stretches, time in every day feels longer than the last. Winter changes how time is felt on the streets. Days begin to blend together. Cold slows movement, and routines repeat without clear milestones. Waiting becomes a major part of life. Waiting for daylight. Waiting for food distribution. Waiting for a warm place to open. Without stable housing, there are few markers to separate one day from the next. Energy is conserved, not spent. Plans remain short-term, shaped by weather and access. Have you ever felt how slow time moves when you're cold and uncomfortable, even for a few hours? Now imagine that feeling lasting for weeks. Winter stretches time quietly, and endurance becomes measured not in days, but in moments. But winter does not last forever. As the season shifts, new challenges and hopes begin to appear. The next chapter looks toward change and what comes after the cold. Chapter 9. When spring feels distant and hope becomes a quiet daily choice. As winter continues, thoughts slowly turn toward what comes next. For people living outside, hope is not a grand idea, it is practical and measured. Hope can mean getting through one more cold morning. It can mean finding dry socks, or hearing that a program has space available. Progress rarely feels immediate. Days are spent waiting, adjusting, and trying again. Setbacks are common, and stability often arrives in small steps rather than sudden change. Community organizations, caseworkers, and outreach teams work toward long-term solutions. They help people navigate housing lists, identification, and services, but the process takes time, especially during winter. Have you ever thought about how long even a few weeks can feel when you are waiting for a fresh start? For many, patience becomes a skill learned through necessity. Despite uncertainty, people continue planning forward. They talk about jobs they once had, places they hope to return to, lives they want to rebuild. Winter does not erase hope, it tests how quietly it can survive. But winter's story does not end here. As seasons change, the city responds in new ways. The final chapter reflects on what awareness and action can make possible. Chapter 10. What awareness can change, and why winter stories still matter. Winter in Denver eventually loosens its grip. Snow melts, temperatures rise, the city moves forward. But for many people, the impact of winter does not disappear with the season. Cold months leave behind exhaustion, disrupted routines, and delayed opportunities for stability. What winter reveals most clearly is not just hardship, but connection. Connection between housing costs and vulnerability. between health and exposure, between public awareness and real change. When stories are seen and understood, systems respond, resources are noticed, support grows, and conversations begin that can lead to action. Awareness alone does not solve homelessness, but it creates space for understanding. It encourages empathy over assumption. And it reminds us that housing instability is not distant. It exists within our cities, neighborhoods, and daily lives. Have you ever considered how different winter feels when you know someone else is facing it without shelter? That awareness is where change often starts. If this story made you pause, reflect, or see winter differently, sharing it matters. Visibility helps these realities reach people who can support, volunteer, advocate, or simply understand more deeply. Winter ends, but responsibility does not. And sometimes, the first step toward change is simply choosing to look and not look away. Winter stories don't end when the video ends. They continue in real lives, on real streets, every single day. If this documentary helped you see winter differently, please like this video so the algorithm can share these stories further. Comment to keep the conversation alive. And share this video, because awareness travels farther when people care. If you believe stories like this matter, subscribe to the channel for more honest, educational documentaries about real life in America. One click may feel small, but sometimes that's how attention turns into understanding. And understanding becomes change. Thank you for watching.